Oh, didn't see you there. It's me, Thomas Edward, also known as T. I'm stood in me nicely given snap-on trapper hat by Dan Morley, one of the biggest snap-on dealers in the Blackpool coast for the Fylde. And I've got my high-vis supported by my patrons, and that was a present. But anyway, you find me in the bush, well, deep in the bush, in the forest actually, because I'm here to look at some railway history and archaeological dig almost. And now this is the, well, I should say I'm in Derbyshire. I'm in Derbyshire today, you know. We're down on the road of T. I'm on the lower part of Buxton Incline. And now the lower part comes from Whaley Bridge down there. Now I must say first, for this line is the line what goes from Cromford Canal, Cromford Wharf, and it comes down to Whaley Bridge at High Peak Canal. So it was a line what joined the Midlands to the northwest, so they could carry mineral back and forth. But it's the days before steam. Well, kind of. I'll touch on why it was slightly different. The difference was they had steam on the inclines like this, but on the flat parts they had horses. So they had a few shire horses what would pull the wagons, and then a lot later date they got steam. So this line was opened in 1831 as a full line. It was 33 miles long, and it took 2 days to complete with horse, and the inclines were run by stationary engines what dragged the wagons up and down. You know, obviously they dragged one up and a set went down, you know, like an incline work. But certain parts of it later date was shut for obvious reasons. We'll get into that further as we go up the incline. But this part here was very interesting. I want to talk about because it has quite a lot of features still. What you can see today, what hasn't disappeared. And even though this line, this part of the incline, the Buxton Incline, only lasted 60 years, where the rest of the line, like further up past Buxton and Cromford, existed way up into the late 60s, where this part was sort of forgotten very early on because obviously the line from Manchester to Buxton appeared and stuff like that. So we're going to go into details as we go along, but I've come to the lower part of the incline at Buxton Incline because there's a bridge what still exists. Now I didn't think it existed this much, but I'm actually looking at it behind camera. This is why I've got this. I'm doing a Martin Zero today, or Patrick Dickinson. Hello! And I'm coming with my torch to go and delve in. And now I didn't think it existed, but it still does, and it was filled in. So in 1937, so this part of the incline was shut in 1892, but it was still almost complete. It was all grassed over, but it was complete. But by the 1930s, they decided to fill a lot of it in because what was the biggest thing, because I'm actually stood in the Goet Valley, and the biggest thing of this valley is for reservoirs. So the first reservoir what was always there since this line was put in was the Fernley Reservoir, what's behind me down there. And then towards the later part, well, we get into the 19th century and you get 1960s, 50s, that sort of era, they decided to put a reservoir over there called Airwood in. Now, but leading up to putting that reservoir in, they started to fill this incline in. So this bit where I'm stood on now with all these trees on and the bridge what's behind me, what's kind of filled in, was filled in 1937. But the top half of the incline, I'll show you, isn't filled in. It's used as a special purpose today, but I'll show you that when we get up there. But first of all, I've got my torch, and let's go and delve in and look at this bridge what was filled in 1937. And there's actually a picture of a lady stood on top of it. Looking down on it where it's freshly refilled, well, filled up, and this is it, look. So I see I bring you to all the best places on these Thomas Edward videos, and here it is, look, it's all filled in, and you can't get through it because it's I'll show you what's on the other side. I'm not going to tell you what's on the other side, but it's filled in because there's something on the other side what totally stops it all together. So look, if I get my torch here, look, you can see, look, it's filled right up to the right up to ceiling, but it's still got a nice arch in it. And it's still, look, right round there. It's still a complete bridge, but it's not a going through bridge. So just think, look, it's look, and it's got bricks. Look, it's actually collapsed in the middle. Some of that is the bricks off the roof, and it's collapsed because above us is like a bit of a path. But I'll show you what's beyond that. So yeah, it was sold in 1937, and this would have had horses. Well, it would have had not horses, but it would have had horses right down there. It would have had steam stationary engines dragging them up here. So this would have had big wagons, big mineral wagons, plank wagons, you know, 8 plank wagons coming through here. A big rake of wagons all going up and through here. But it only lasted, just think they built this bridge for the railway. Obviously there was a bit of a crossing here, and it only stood here for 60 years. So it's been longer derelict, this bridge, than it had been opened as a railway going through. What's pretty fascinating to me. So there you go, that's the first point of interest on the Bunsell Incline at the bottom. I am going to do a bit of B-roll right down the bottom of the incline, just down there, because there is a picture I want to try and recreate where I put that music on. Da-da-da, that music what Greg Billington like. But we're going to go up on top, and I'll show you what the interesting part is, why this is filled in, what's on the other side. Come on, let's go up here. I might go down there, it's easier. So I'm stood on top of that bridge. We were underneath there before, and that's how well hidden it is. It's right underneath there. We're on top, filled in the way it is, because when they built Irwood's Reservoir up there, you had to make a new road to come down. So the top half, the lower part of the incline, and then going into the top half of the incline was all tarmac. And we're going to show you. So it was filled in because they didn't need that. They needed a road on top of it, so they needed to level it off round here so they could get the road. It's a big sweeping corner here, but you can still see the main part of the line there, what links up to this little bridge. So we'll go up there. So I'm stood next to JJ the MGZR, and he's just parked off the road here. So this was tarmac to 1967, when obviously they've completed sort of the reservoir Airwood, and this is the new part what they put in. And obviously they didn't need that bridge because the line had gone all those years ago, so they filled it all in. And obviously now it's got a bit of a car park on top of it where everyone goes walking in the Goet Valley. Down there it swoops up and it goes up, and that, when it just goes up, that's the old incline. And for many years, after it shut in 1892, it just had grass on top of it. And there's lots of pictures of it with grass on top of it, like really early photography. But in 67 they tarmacked it because they changed all the road system in this valley. So we're going to go up. The next point of interest, I must say, this is the famous Cromford and High Peak railway line. It's quite sort of well known nowadays because the top half going up to Cromford is all cycle paths. Well, actually me and the cameraman have done a few years ago on electric bikes, but the lower part, even though around Rayleigh Bridge you can walk through it, this part here is very much forgotten in a way, even though people drive on it. But we're best disappear because there's actually people coming for a walk now, and I don't think they want the talking man next to them. So we're going to get up. Next point of interest is the engine house, where they had a winding engine. Well, we're at the top of the lower incline. We're just going to go up there and I'll show you something. Just got to watch for cars. There's a few cars about today. See these stones down here underneath this makeshift lay-by cum car park? Well, these, from far as my research goes and my knowledge goes, these are the remains of the engineer's house, what is actually a picture of, what I can show you, and the engine house, what would have the big stationary engine, what would pull the mineral wagons up the incline, up the lower part of the incline, because it was such a big incline this, they didn't have enough cable and probably a strong enough engine to pull the whole length of it. So they had 2 engine houses and engines, and the first one was here for the lower part, and it was on this bit here. And it was sort of buried into this sort of hillside. You can actually see we had a cutout of where it was behind us. What's here, you can sort of see the cutout here where there was an engine house and there was a house. The house is on this side, if you can look on the picture. It's on this side, and the engine house would have been roughly here, or it might have been on the other side of the road, but it was here. So this was the lower part. The middle wagons would get to here. They keep them attached to the engine, but then the top engine at the top would they detach on, and then they take this engine off, and then obviously it carry on up to the top, to the next engine. Now the engines on here, I think this engine or the top engine, once it was replaced eventually, or when they shut it, the engine went through quarry and ended up being a crushing machine and crushing rock. But prior to that, it was running the middle wagons backwards and forward up here. In the early days, the wagons used to come up and down here on their own, and then when they got rid of ponies and horses, shire horses, on the flat parts, where the horses always do the flat parts, but when they got here, they had stationary engines. When the horses disappeared and steam appeared, in 1841 the first steam engine appeared, and it was a Stevenson and Co engine, so it could have been George Stevenson, or it could have been Robert, his son, could have built it. That was the first engine to appear on the line, and 20 years after that, 1861, most of this line was run by steam. The power of steam appeared. So when you got to the inclines, they'd actually attach to the steam engines as well. So once they go up to the flat bit and the top of the engine would just carry on, or it got to the bottom, it could carry on again. So they didn't have to just like, originally they'd probably have a horse at the bottom, what would take the wagons going down, he'd take it back that way, and the pony at the top, what was bringing one this way, he'd take one that way. I think that's how it would work. And then when steam appeared, they could drag the steam engine the whole length of the 33-mile long line from Peak Forest Canal, High Peak Forest Canal, all the way to Cromford Canal. So there you go. I've just come from the engine shed over there to my right, and the engine house. Just come down a mooch before we go right up the top half of the incline. This little tunnel, what obviously was where the railway used to go over the top of, what now the road goes over the top of. And it's actually, you can see to the other end, so I wonder where I'm a mooch when we touch. That's pretty cool. Got bits of chopped up wood in it, and stone, and bits of tarp, I think they have. It looks like someone's been dossing down here. Maybe Patrick's been down here with his bivvy on. Pretty good, that. And it's all subsided. That has a bit of wood there. It's all subsided. Someone's done a fireplace there, so they've been hanging out under here, doing a bit of wild camping's been going on. But like, it's still here. This is a bit more complete than the actual railway bridge we were looking at before. This is not really a railway tunnel or bridge. This is what went underneath for the farmer to take his sheep through and his livestock, or the country folk around here, so to speak. So there you go. So on and upwards, we're going to go and get pulled by some stationary engine up to the top of the hill now in an MGZR. So we've been winched up to the top of Buxton Incline, and that's the view you get when you're on top. You get to see Fernley Reservoir down there, and Irwood's over there, which you can't see. And then that valley leads into Whaley Bridge, and then you get New Mills around the corner, and Marple and Stockport, where they make hats. A lot of TE jean bank in that bit, or jean pool, I should say. And I think that's Whaley Moor up there, what you can just see, that big hill. And then we'll come up to top. As it said, we looked at the first engine shed and the winding, the winding engine shed and the engineer's house halfway up the lower part of the incline, and then for the top part of the incline they had another winding house. And I believe as you get to the top here, as we see it today, and you just go around this left hand turn, this bit of land, this grass, is where the engine house was, or the engine, you know, the winching house, with a big winching engine in, was on here. Now there's lots of things also on the net about on this incline, and in these grassy banks you can see old chairs, like back then before they had sleepers, they had chairs like what you put your rails on, and because they'd have fish belly rails. I'd have to show you on the picture to explain it. But it was different back then how they did track. As well as the engines, they did track differently. So they had chairs, they had big like stone square chairs what the track would bolt onto, and then between each stone chair, the rails would be have a bow in it, and they'd call it fish belly. So they used to be able to see them, but you can't now. There's bits of rocks about, but it isn't them. So I think they're buried, or some Malfoley's have been up there and got them and put them in the shed for a future day. So on here, I believe on this bit is where they had the engine winding house. I don't think they had I don't think he had his cottage up here. I think the cottages, they just had one cottage, and that was at the middle down there. But they had the other engine house here, because obviously they winch up to the first one, get another big cable on it, and then winch up to this one. And in the early days it was just wagons went way up and down, like I was telling you before, and then later they'd actually pull the early steam engines up as well as the rake of mineral wagons. So there you go, I think it's on here. There's a few rocks about, but I don't know if council put them there to stop people camping and parking on it, but it could be original as well. They could have just found it and put it here. So we're going to walk round the corner now to the next point of interest, with a mill pond, a big mill pond, and an old road I'm going to show you as well, and it's round here. Now we've walked up to the top. You can park up here. There's many bits of car parks you can park in. And this is on the map it always says mill pond on it, but it's also really the engine pond, what a lot of people call it as, because obviously the engine in the name is, obviously they had the winding house there, and the line carried on up there, but when they use this pond to fill the winding engine up, you know, because it needs water, steam engines need water, but also when you had steam engines as on the rail steam engines from 1840s, 1860s, when they really got into using steam on this line, they'd use that to fill the water, they'd use that to fill the engines up with water. They'd probably have a big pipe down drawing water out. And the interesting thing is about this pond up here, it's a myth. It's got a lot of folklore to it, and it's mythical, and it's probably got a few Loch Ness monsters in it, but it's got more mechanical Loch Ness monsters in it, because the tail, and this is not just one person who says this is many things. Our family generations have said it, and other people's families generations have said it, but in the bottom of there's a steam engine, and now it's a bottomless pond as well. No one knows how deep it is, because you just can't find the bottom, so there's an engine right down the bottom. So we need Dan Dixon to come with his underwater drone to fire it down and have a look if they can find it, or they can we can have a venture purpose come with some sonar on those canoes, the American lads, and see if they can find it. But obviously it must have been on there, and it must have just fell off and went in it. Or it's a big winding engine. Maybe when they finished with it, they might have just put it in there to get rid of it. It could be something like that. And then down here behind me is the old road what went down into the valley before Irwood appeared. Before they were going to flood the valley, that was the old road down, and obviously the new road's on the old track bed there behind me. But originally it went down that track there, and that was because when they flooded the valley for Haywood, they couldn't use that, so they had to make a new one on the old track bed, what obviously was being abandoned a lot of years by then. So it's like, oh, it's the perfect idea. We'll just tarmac that. So we got a road down into the valley, and it will go across the new dam what goes across between Fernley and Haywood. There's a big dam that goes across. Where originally Fernley Reservoir had a T's mum actually remembers a metal bridge going across it, a chain link bridge over the old reservoir, and she would have used that road. You know, that's how far we're going back here. And then this is the last. There was 9 inclines on the 33-mile Cromford and High Peak line, and this was obviously one of the 9, but this one was the last one for quite a lot of miles. I think the next one you're getting up towards Worksworth, you get way past Parsley and all the way up there, so you get to the next incline. So this was sort of the last big one for a few miles before they got to another one. We're going to come back on another day and do more on this line. So up there, if we carried on up there, obviously you go into Buxton up there, but you get to Burbridge, and then Burbridge tunnels up there, what's all blocked up. It's always been blocked up. I think maybe T.E.'s mum's been through it before it was blocked up, but I don't know. I can't remember what she said on that. But yeah, we'll go on a future date. We'll go off and have a look. We'll go and walk it and have a look. And also I want to film down at Whaley Bridge as well, around the canal, because you still can see in Whaley Bridge a lot of this line. It's very much intact in a way, even though the railway track is gone, there's still a lot of stuff you can see. It's quite interesting, Whaley Bridge. I remember as a kid being in Whaley Bridge when my brothers lived there, looking at it. Because this shut so early on, you can't really imagine what the engine house would look like, but we can actually get you a bit of footage or a picture of on this line further up at Middleton top. They still have a working engine in an engine house at the top of the incline, and a few old wagons, so we could show you what this would have looked like. Because this shut so early on, it disappeared, where Middleton tops much later, it managed to be saved. So we'll get some footage or some images of that to show you. But we're going to go down there and I'll do my ending, I think that's what we're going to do.
Here we see the workshops of the Cromford and High Peak Railway at Cromford in Derbyshire. These are situated at the base of one of 9 inclined planes that the old railway route used to take over the peaks of Derbyshire to Whaley Bridge. Sitting atop of these steep inclined planes were engine houses. These engine houses contained beam engines which drove a rope that would assist steam locomotives up the steep inclined planes. One of these engine houses remains preserved today, here at Middleton Top. Contained within are a pair of beam engines that on selected days are run not by steam these days, but on compressed air.
Right, so that's everything from Buxton Incline. I thought I'd do a TE inspired video on it because no one has done anything on this. Someone's done, I think, on the top from the winding house on, but not sort of this bit. This bit's never been really covered in detail, even though there's a bit of imagery online and a bit of information online about it. There's not very much video evidence of people showing exactly where it is and what the interests are of this incline. So hopefully that's we've done a first with TE. We're leading many people. Martin's there will be here next week looking down a few holes because I've done it. Maybe it might have. Or Patrick Dickinson because he's seen the reservoir and those big holes where the overflow holes are, and that pond. Dan Dixon could be turning up with his drone in that pond. So if you're in oh, I'm just going to get run over, hold on. So there you go. That's the modern Buxton Incline, cars going up and down it instead of wagons. So if you've enjoyed today's video, make sure you give us a like, a subscribe, a comment below, and also join Patreon if you can, because it's all goes to creating content on these travelling down from the north to capture interesting things with TE. And remember to click that big bell. Ding!